Apparently you also already have some attendees here. Maybe a few more will join. We're also live on Facebook right now. So let me take the opportunity to welcome everyone who's here already in front of your various devices, and give some time for everyone else to join. Because Natalie, apparently you still get some pressure in your time schedule. Let's start right away with tonight's discussion about politics after COVID-19, or maybe with COVID-19. We don't know what the world will look like after 2022. What we do know is that we as a young generation are affected by what's going on in the world. And it's also our responsibility to change something about that. We see the world economy in decline. We have seen many challenges in politics in 2020. I remember starting the year with bushfires in Australia and in Brazil. Then there was this tension between Iran and USA when we were expecting World War III, but then we had a global pandemic. And I think whatever it is, we as a young generation are affected, and that's why we have to raise our voices. And tonight we want to wonder about which issues we should raise our voices and in which way we should do that. With the current crisis of the global politics, I think there's an opportunity to rebuild something after that. And we have seen that those people who are now in power, who will decide in Kenya, in Germany, in Europe, and in the world, that's not the voices of young people, but another generation, an old generation, who will probably not live through all the effects of their actions, whereas we will. So tonight, let's wonder where we want to develop politics in general in Kenya, in Europe, and in the world, and to see which issues are at the heart of our generation. And for that, I'm very happy to have some very good panelists with us tonight, all very young, and I'm very vocal about their views. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. You can also follow the discussion on Facebook Live. Remember to use the chat here and join the discussion as you feel like. Also on Twitter under the hashtag Youth and Politics and Kenya. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and with that, all the best, and I give the word to Annika. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christoph, for that brilliant introduction to this session. My name is Annika JD. I am the Executive Director of Green Congress of Kenya, which is a member of the Global Greens Movement. I'm also a very active participant in politics, and I'm the founder and convener of the Young Women in Political Parties Leadership in Kenya. And as such, I would like to quickly delve into the agenda of the day. But before that, I would like to introduce our distinguished panelists by expressing, letting you know who they are and what they do. So I'll start with Veronica. Veronica is, please wave to the people. Veronica is a policy advisor for development policy in the 2030 Agenda Department at Konrad Adenauer Institute. In this role, she works on topics concerning German and European development policy, as well as sustainable development. Now, prior to her position, she worked as a research associate in the CAS regional program titled Political Dialogue in South Mediterranean. This was based in Tunis in the GIZ program, which was dubbed Cooperation with Arab Donors in Amman. Veronica studied political science and international public management at the Free University of Berlin and University of California in Los Angeles and Sciences, Paul Paris. Veronica, please unmute yourself and say hi as we begin.
Hi, thank you, Annika, for the nice introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, what you are important political aspects and how youth can get engaged in these difficult times.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. And next, we have Natalie Habagash, a PhD candidate in the field of cybersecurity relations at the University of Potsdam and a scholarship holder of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. She has professional experience that spans working as a political advisor for the international office at the CDU Germany, the German Bundestag, and the EPP in Brussels. She is also part of the Joint Union International Commission. She is currently working for an MP in the German parliament, and she continues to contribute heavily towards policy formulation in Germany. Natalie, welcome and say hi.
Thank you. Hello.
Great. I will next go to Martha. Martha is a Kenyan citizen. She is a politics and international relations graduate from Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. Her professional background includes working with refugees in resettlement programs funded by the Department of Immigration in Australia. She did this as well as managing government subsidized housing for people at risk for over a period of 6 years. She has also worked as a trainer for programs that equip female political aspirants in marginalized groups, as well as female student leaders in tertiary institutions across Kenya through the Women Democracy Network Kenya chapter. Martha, karibu sana. Could you say hi?
Hi, Nika. Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I'm honored to be here, excited about the conversations we're going to be having, and let's see what happens.
Great. Thank you very much, Martha. So I'm just going to go into Charles Lemaine, if I'm correct. Charles is a former chairman at the St. Paul's University Students Association. He is also a former senatorial aspirant in Kajiado County in the year 2017 and a future aspirant for the year 2022. Very well done, Charles. Charles is also the secretary for the Young Democrat Union of African Elections and Election Observations Board. He is the current national chairman for KANU Youth Congress. Welcome, Charles. Please say hi.
Thank you very much. It feels so good to be here. And looking at the panelists, I think today I'm the minority, being the only gent on the as a panelist, but I really feel good to be here and looking forward to hear a lot from my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. A warm welcome to you. Nowadays, we are on a two-thirds gender principle, so Christoph is helping you in gender terms. So very quickly, I'm going to go on to discuss the agenda of the day and start with an opening question with regards to the situation for young people in politics. And I'll direct this question to Natalie, as I noticed you have time constraints. So Natalie, what do you think about politics for young people in the current situation post-COVID? What is the situation? What is the response of young people to political issues now as opposed to before COVID?
Also, thank you very much from my side. It's very good seeing you all and having this international conversation. I think looking into the current situation, tools like this and international conferences via Zoom and other digital tools are getting more and more normal for all of us. So I'm happy that we can make this happen and keep this international dialogue. Looking at Germany now, all of you know that within next year we will have big changes after so many years of Angela Merkel as the power of Germany and the leader of the CDU Germany. I think we will have a huge generation switch, not just concerning COVID-19, but I think within the discussion in Germany and what is happening lately now, I think more and more young people want to join the discussion, want to be political active. I think what we are seeing are a lot of demonstrations, not just in Germany, also in the USA currently, with a variety of topics. here in Germany, we had huge climate debates last year with Fridays for Future and looking at the European elections, climate change was a huge topic for us. And now, 1 year before the parliamentary elections in Germany, what I'm experiencing is that more and more young people would like to run for parliament. And I think with digital tools, social media, more and more people are trying to get active in politics, and they see they can only do a change in politics. I know there are a variety of initiatives where people try to join and make a change, not just regarding climate change. And I think with COVID-19, people are realizing that they want to join the debate and want to make a difference. And we will see more of this. So I think COVID-19 is maybe a positive example of how people want to discuss and join a debate and decide about their own future.
Right. I think you're very right. Bringing it closer to home in Nairobi, I'd call upon Martha to give us her analysis or her contribution. Martha, what do you think is the response of young people today as opposed to 4 or 5 months ago towards governance and policy issues from young people? Do they care more about their government? Do they want to be involved? Or are they still aloof and away from governance processes?
Thank you, Anika. I honestly believe that the reaction from young people is that we were not prepared for this season of COVID. It caught everyone off guard. As citizens, and also it exposed governments in terms of the gaps. It exposed us in terms of how we do business. And when I talk business, I'm talking about the business of government. And, you know, for the longest time, it's always been about what is the government doing for us. And if anything, this COVID season has exposed the fact that government that focus wasn't healthy, that we're always waiting for government to, you know, create opportunities for us as young people. And so the conversation now and the feeling right now among young people is the realization that where they were looking to get their help, that is non-existent. It was fiction and it was an illusion. And now we, you know, as young people, you can tell there's a feeling of frustration. You know, it's amazing how this COVID has affected young people. Like in my town, we have one of the universities here, and a lot of the business that's happening within, like outside of the university, a lot of the businesses were run by young people. So photocopy shops, printing, cyber cafes, juice parlors, restaurants, all of that was being run by young people. And now you drive down that street, and it's quite a long street. It's a ghost town. And for me, it breaks my heart because it's young people who've had to close down businesses that were sustaining them as students. And so the general feeling is we have to do things different. We have to change our thinking in terms of we're not always going to rely on government to do and create opportunities for us. We have to take responsibility ourselves as young people. And that's, I feel that that's the general feeling where young people are concerned, is that no one is coming to help us. We have to take responsibility for our own lives, but also we have to take responsibility for a lot of decisions that are being made on our behalf, apparently on our behalf. Yeah. So that's my feeling.
Right. Thank you very much, Martha. It's very clear that most governments may not have handled the COVID response very well. And and the COVID response is going to be a major determinant in the upcoming elections as people gauge their leaders on how responsive they were. But just to double back on what Natalie contributed, and she said that, you know, social media is going to play a huge role. I'd like to ask Veronica, noting that the world has moved to a global platform and the global platform is the home of the youth, do you think that social media will finally be able to influence youth to avidly and actively participate in political processes within their localities and vicinities?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm the social media expert, but I'll do my best to answer the question. I think social media is a big opportunity for that. I think we've all become way more digital within the last few months. At least for me, that's the case. I've never Skyped and Zoomed and participated in as many seminars as in the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is a massive chance in that because it's become easier to have a panel like this. Nobody has to fly anywhere. It's very low key to engage and to have all these voices coming together. At the same time, I think for sustained participation and sustained engagement, it's way more difficult. Because it's always easy to have one seminar or to have 2 or 3 seminars, but to really have this long-term engagement that people like Natalie, for example, have in the political sphere, I think that's way more difficult to sustain on a digital platform.
Right.
And the second thing that I think is difficult, that social media has also been misused quite a lot. It's been misused for false information, for fake news, etc., etc. And especially in the pandemic, we've seen that it's been used for a lot of bad as well. It's done a lot of harm, spreading fake news. So I think it's probably both. It's a chance, but it's also a bit of a risk. And as I said, I think as a first kind of step to having new networks and getting to know more people and their perspectives, it's quite useful. At the same time, for this kind of sustained long-term engagement, I think we'll have to probably also find other formats, or like hybrid forms at least, I guess.
Right. Well, I'd now double back to Charles and ask, you know, we have youth being mostly used as, you know, in the African context, they have mostly been used as people to implement the political agendas of, you know, various leaders who are older, most of the time in a violent manner, or, you know, when they need heavy lifting, but are not really in the room. So maybe as a youth, as the leader of a youth congress and one of the oldest parties in the country, I'd ask Charles, do you think that the approach of youth towards political processes has changed as a result of COVID?
Thank you very much, Anika. I think first, apart from the negative aspect or the negative things that COVID came with, I think COVID has given young people a good time to think and rethink on the things that they were doing, especially what you've talked about. One of them being heavy lifting for the older politicians. And during for like 3-4 months now in our Kenyan politics, we've not had the active campaigns and everything. So you find young people not having that opportunity to go and work as security or carry bags for politicians. Therefore, this has created more sense to young people that what we used to do as young people in terms of in politics, especially being used to fill stadiums or do dirty work for the politicians, it only benefits the specific people, because when you look at the political class of our country now, most of them are nowhere to be seen. They are either enjoying their homes, but the young people are outside there still struggling. Therefore, I think these act as an eye-opener to the young people in Kenya, and they are realizing now that whatever we thought that engaging in politics, whatever we think that was right that we were doing, definitely is wrong. And after COVID, that is when you will see people realizing that I don't have to do something dirty for these politicians so that maybe I can't be seen as an active member of a political party or a political wing. No, I think these are really help people rethink and also try and engage in other activities apart from working for politicians or individuals. Definitely now young people will stand up and look for solutions or ways forward rather than working for individual politicians.
Right, you're absolutely right. I think it's really a moment to self-reflect. And, you know, building on Natalie's experience as someone who deals with policy formulation and legislation every day, I would ask Natalie, in your experience, because some of these issues are also experienced globally, in your experience post-COVID, what would you say are the major issues in terms of governance or policies, be it health, be it taxes or business policies? What do you think hit the youth the most, and what did they really stand to say that oh my God, this government is responsible for A, B, C, D, you know, in managing COVID?
Well, what is a huge topic, of course, in Germany, and I think for a lot of European countries, is how we deal with digitalization. I think with COVID-19, we realized now that our state is not digital enough. When you look in some parts of Germany where you have almost no internet connection, especially in rural areas. I think this is a huge topic where younger people say this is not acceptable anymore. And when we look at health policy, I think this is also a huge topic now with COVID-19 and also after COVID-19, and how you can change digitalization within the health sector. And with all the money that we are using now to support small and large businesses, a lot of young people look at, okay, we're using all of this money, but how much money are we actually looking at spending when it comes to pension policy in the future? I think what my youth organization, the Junge Union, is always questioning and pressuring older parliamentarians and also within the CDU. How are we spending our money? How many enterprises are we supporting? And what is actually left for the younger generation in 40 years when we look at our pension system, and how are we supporting our state in total? I think those are main topics, as well as artificial intelligence is a topic that we are always discussing. And as I said at the beginning, I think climate change will be the main topic that we will be discussing within the next couple of years, because what we are seeing, and what I already said with Fridays for Future and climate activists, I think last year this was the main topic, and no one actually realized COVID-19 is coming. And now these groups and activists are pressuring, okay, you spend so much money now on COVID-19, but what is actually happening with our environment? So I think within policy planning for the next years, it will be a discussion, how can we look at digitalization on the one side and climate change on the other side, and how can we compete with China, the USA, and what will be the role of Germany within Europe as a whole. So I think there are a lot of questions, and I think COVID-19 shocked all of us, and I'm a bit worried that a lot of topics will now be left behind and then hit us afterwards.
Right. Well, that's a really great insight, and that leads me to my next question, or my next, reflection. Intergenerational co-leadership has been launched as a blueprint for youth engagement in Africa by the Office of the African Youth Envoy, and globally by the Office of the UN Secretary General's Special Youth Envoy. So my question to Veronica would be, noting that the youth are not in positions of leadership. By this, I mean in government ministries. in the top 3 command, you may not likely find a youth, or in the commissions, in the board, in the task forces that are currently being formed to combat COVID itself, then how is it that young people will get engaged in these processes? And is the world ready for intergenerational co-leadership to give youth a chance to influence the policies that affect them and their generations?
Thank you for the question. Maybe can I add one point to what Natalie said? I'd like to enforce one of the points she said. I think climate and, in a bigger sense, sustainability is definitely going to be one of the topics that we're going to be forced to look at for a very long time, because it's going to be one of the big future topics, I think. And I think the important thing is that it's environment on the one hand, but it's also social sustainability, it's pension systems, it's how we deal with all the social issues of poverty, but then it's also economic sustainability, it's job security, especially for young people as well, employment issues, all of that. And I think COVID-19 is probably a chance as well, because now we have this kind of economic recovery that's ongoing. And I think it's a major chance to kind of design that in a way to link environmental, social, and economic sustainability, to not kind of go back to normal, but to do something that's maybe better than what we had before and more inclusive of other dimensions that we didn't look at as much before. And that's maybe just as an addition to what Natalie said.
Right.
On the intergenerational co-leadership and how young people can have an influence, I think there's 2 big ways. I think there's political parties, and again, Natalie and Charles can probably say more on that than I can. But it is one of the major leeways and ways how you can influence politics. I think it's important that young people get engaged in political parties. There is ways to really change things and to really get new topics and push for topics that you think are important through that avenue. And at the same time, I think what we see with Fridays for Future, like Natalie has mentioned before as well, there is also this avenue of kind of public popular pressure that, when it gets to a certain level, also exerts some kind of pressure on politicians to really look at the issues that people bring up. So that's the 2 kind of big avenues I see. But of course, it would be nice if also more established politicians and kind of more established rounds of power would make more of an active effort to also listen to young voices. That, of course, if we could combine all of those, I think we'd already be a big step further ahead.
Right, very well said. I think, having tapped onto Charles, I'll just jump on his bandwagon for a minute and analyze, or maybe ask, there has been, of course, a lot of push and pull in the inclusion of youth. And nowadays, every political party in Kenya, we have currently 72 registered political parties, and each of these parties has a youth wing. But there has been conversation, and research was done by the Commonwealth Youth Association, or League, on the effectiveness of youth leagues in political party processes. And as such, I would ask Charles, as a youth leader of a youth wing in one of the biggest political parties, what changes would you like to see in the political party system in terms of leadership of young people? And what positions do you think should the youth aim for or angle for in order to bring real change to the political party system? Because the political parties are the ones forming government.
Thank you very much, Anika. First, I'm privileged to be in one of the oldest parties in the country, and also being the chair of the Youth Week, which is a good party to be in for those who are in Kenya. Now, back to your question. One of the things that I came to realize as a chair of the Youth Wing, especially in the oldest political party in Kenya, is that many young people join political parties with different reasons. Some of them join because of their ideology. Some of them join because of maybe the presidential candidate. Some of them join because they have an aspirant, maybe in their county, a governor. They join because of different reasons. And that hinders the function of the young people, especially knowing that these people are not there for ideological purposes, or they are not there to build that political party. They are there because of a different agenda. They have someone they are following in the party, or they believe in the party leader. Once that person goes out, you will see people walking out of the party because an individual has already walked out of the party. Therefore, one of the things that young people in Kenya, and I really admire the Western way of doing politics, especially when it comes to political party. You find someone being born in this party and stays in that party forever. But here in Kenya, today I'm in this political party, the next election I go to another political party, because one, I don't have a genuine reason, or I'm not attracted to a party because of its ideology, because of its agenda. No, I'm there because of a particular individual, or I'm following someone. And that goes back to what we said earlier, that young people are being attracted to political parties just to have quorum for political parties. And therefore, I think what we should do as young people, once we are in these political parties, let's not only eye for positions in the youth wing. There are so many positions in the political party, and I believe old folks in politics, especially in Kenya, are using political youth wings to blackmail young people that you are only entitled to have positions in your youth wing, and you are not entitled to have positions in the mainstream. And therefore, you find young people fighting in the youth wing for the few positions in the youth wing, forgetting that there is a main party. We have a women's wing. We also have the mainstream, which makes the main decision in the party. So we find young people. Maybe when you come to my party, in the National Executive Council, we have 3 representatives from the youth wing. That is the chair, the secretary, and the treasurer. And you will not find young people going for other positions in the party. They will only be focused on the 3 positions so that they can get to the next. But if we have young people, not only should not only focus on the youth wing positions in the political party, but should also go for the mainstream. We love to see a young people being a party leader, a chair of a political party, a vice chair of a political party, not only having a segment for the young people, of which young people should realize that they are the majority. And and I think that reflects on what you asked, Veronica, that what we should do as young people so that we can have representation. We are the majority when it comes to voting, or to young people are the majority of the electorates in Kenya. And therefore, we will continue lamenting each year coming, each election, until we realize that we are the majority in this country. And I believe all over the world, young people are the majority. And therefore, if we are the majority, why should we be the minority when it comes to elective posts? How do we mobilize these young people so that they can be motivated, so that they can go out there and vie for this elective post? And maybe in the next election, since we are having our general elections come 2022, when we have a big number of young people being elected to parliament, to senate, to county assemblies, I don't think we will have any problem when it comes to representation, or articulating issues that affect young people. We will continue to have few young people in parliament. We have a few young people in the senate, or in the county assemblies. But so I think the only thing that can bring this down, and the only thing that can cure this sort of sickness, is have more young people getting into elective positions. And when we get to these elective positions, I've seen someone saying that young people are willing to get into elective positions, but the problem is that maybe they have problems with finances, they have problems with their campaigns. But I always believe in one thing: when we change the mentality of the electorates, that you don't have, a candidate doesn't have to have money doesn't have to give you money so that you can elect them, that is the time we will start changing the politics of this country, because young people elect leaders based on how much they give them, or how much they have, or how much they satisfy their financial need, which is not right. And I have so much respect for people of Meru in our constituency. They elected a man without a single coin, a guy who was doing his campaign using a bicycle. And in Kenya, that is not something normal. And that, I think, he's now the youngest member of parliament, elected members of parliament in Kenya. If we could emulate that and see our fellow young people who are going for positions as people who will articulate our issues, as people who understand what we go through, that is when we will have young people being elected. But if we continue looking or having that perspective of what do you have, how much can you give me, I think this issue will continue, and we will continue lamenting on the representation of young people, and we will get to an old age, and then we will take advantage of young people the way the older people are taking advantage of us, and this will continue. But let's change the mentality of the young electorates to give opportunity to young leaders.
Right, that's very well said and quite comprehensive in your answer. Actually, as an executive director of a political party currently, I realize that a lot of young people, as you have accurately said, do not go for the positions in the mainstream of the political party and are relegated to the management of the youth wing. And this is usually to the detriment of the advancement of the youth agenda, because when people are sitting down to discuss issues that are relevant to political party processes or policies, or when the agenda or the government of the day is formed, then they don't feature in the leadership or the governments or the face of the party that is going to be seen out there. And I'm seeing people commenting here. I have Samuel Lunani, who says, how do we compete politically yet we are not economically empowered? He says he is a political aspirant for member of parliament, but he is broke. And this adds to what Charles has just said, that we really need to shift focus of elections from what can the aspirant do for you other than what you can do for your aspirant. Because once you include money in the transaction, then it means that the aspirant or the candidate has finished with you at that point. So moving forward, it's his time to recoup his finances that he spent on you. But I'm just going to bring in Natalie quickly and shortly, just to ask about, political party processes and the leadership of young people in political parties. I've seen it across even established democracies, that young people, apart from being candidates, rarely have the chance to contribute to the processes that produce these candidates. So I would like to ask, how does your democracy in Germany incorporate young people not only as political candidates, and even in the context of COVID, how are young people going to be incorporated into the leadership of political parties?
Mm-hmm. Well, I just read something today which I found really interesting, also coming back to Fridays for Future, the huge climate activists here in Germany. So what I've read, a lot of people thought they are automatically part of the Green Party and that they are supported by the Green Party. And now a lot of them are asked, how can you take political responsibility without being in a political party? And I think we're discussing this a lot here in Germany. And I read that they are discussing now if they should form their own party with other small parties. We have an animal party, for example. We have a so-called pirate party, and really, really small parties that are not part of the German parliament right now. So a lot of people are discussing right now if they will all join together and form a climate activists party, because they don't feel represented enough by mainstream parties or so-called people's parties as the CDU or
the Social Democrats or the Green Party. So I think looking at our elections next year, it will be quite interesting how we can have this shift, if we will see another new party in our parliament, or if the Green will have another huge hype. And looking at the CDU, I think the discussion has been going on for a couple of years now. Our Junge Union has around 110,000 members, but we are actually losing more members than we're gaining new members. So the discussion, how can we involve young people in a political party, and how can be so-called People's Party be still attractive for young people? And we've seen this in France and in other European countries that established parties like the CDU are struggling to gain new members. And I think what we did with Paul Ziemiak, who has been the leader of the Junge Union, who has been the first young politician who has been directly appointed from a youth position as the Secretary General of the CDU. This was a huge shift for us as an established party. And I think when I look at first nominations for the elections now next year, we see more and more young people who just try to run for a position even against someone. So we have actually 2 people for 1 mandate running, and they are open to have this competition about positions. So I think the CDU is trying to emphasize and encourage young people, hey, we are the party where everyone is welcome and you have the chance to participate. We just discussed also the question of women quotas within our party, and this will also be a long-lasting discussion until the end of the year, until we have our Congress. Within the parliament, we have a group of young MPs until the age of 35. So it's a quite small group, but everyone who is below the age of 35 is joining this parliament group, and they discuss young issues and young topics within the German parliament. And the chair of the Junge Union has also a seat in the CDU board. So I think these are small advantages, but it's not enough. And what I've been seeing also with digital formats, what the CDU is doing now, that they realized, especially due to the climate activists last year, and we also had a huge discussion about a YouTube star that labeled his YouTube video the destroying of the CDU, and the CDU didn't find the right answer. So I think within the past couple months, even before COVID, but of course within COVID as well, how are we making formats that it's interesting for young people to join a political party? But what I'm experiencing is that a lot of people see that without being in a political party or without actually running for parliament, your options to actually make a change are limited. So I think we actually have to discuss and tell people what you can actually change when you are part of the decision-making process. So I'm really hoping within the next 12 months, this debate will follow and we can encourage more people that it's more than just to protest and to go out on the streets, that political participation and the way you can actually emphasize on policies is within a political party. And I'm really thankful for Konrad Adenauer Foundation and the variety of networks they are having, and how you can actually have training within political participation is really helpful for our political system.
I'm seeing some conversations in the chat box, just contributing and just drinking in what you said. I know Frida has made a comment, and I'll get back to you, Frida, on social on social media, but I just want to highlight what Whitney has said, that Anika, it's not always about bribery. Talk of logistics, imagining how vast a constituency is, and not just a constituency, a county. Where some people want to be senator, like Charles. Some people want to be women rep. That covers a whole county. And so bringing it back to the local context, I want to switch to you, Martha, noting that Boniface Mwangi was the first one to do a campaign that involved contributions from the people. How would you address Lunani's point? And in addition, now in the COVID area or COVID era, what would you think would be the reaction to politics from young women? Because we have had a lot of political apathy from the young women. They have never been known to stand in the queues to vote. So before we move on to our social media warriors, or what we call our keyboard warriors, I would like Martha to just jump in on the local situation and how you think politics affects young women moving forward.
You know, it's interesting that we talk about, young people and their involvement in politics and political parties. And sometimes I feel like we forget that today we have the most vibrant young people in this generation. I mean, these are young people who are creative and innovative. They have the potential to be transformational leaders. They have productivity, energy, drive, a high level of education, readiness to learn, demonstrate a high affinity for networking and entrepreneurship, as well as the ability to use and develop ICT and its application. So, I mean, we're living with a generation of young people who are at their best. But I also feel like for years, the culture has been, we have been cultured to be consumers rather than creators. And I was listening to someone who was saying, we've got to learn to be co-creators. And when you look at even the way we were brought up that, the parent in the house, whatever they said was law. You couldn't question it, you couldn't analyze it, you couldn't refute it, you accepted it as it is, so you consumed it. When you go into our schools and education institutions, we are consuming whatever we're given towards a certain career. So we consume sciences because we want to end up we want to end up being doctors. We consume the arts, the histories, and those sort of subjects because we want to either become lawyers and all that stuff. And so our culture has been to consume, but this generation is breaking that mold in creating, in focusing on creating. They're not just accepting what it is that is handed on the plate. And young people really need to focus on that. It's unfortunate that I listen to someone like Lunani who says they're not economically empowered, but you are empowered. You have a brain that you haven't bought for, you haven't begged for, you haven't gotten funding for. That's something that is powerful, that is yours, that you use. That is where your power lies. When I look at young people today, I want to inspire and challenge them to think, to use what they have. If it is using your hands, then use your hands. Use your hands to make a difference where you are. If there's anything this COVID season is teaching many of us, is that this is the best time to do the work that we need to do on the grassroots. I like what Natalie said in terms of policy making. It seems like such a big word, but honestly speaking, it's identifying an issue, mobilizing your neighbors and your friends and the people you live with in that area to talk about it, come up with solutions, and mobilize towards getting that officiated. And so what you have for young people, you have something that you can use. Your brain is the most powerful resource that a 65-year-old man may not be able to celebrate, if I should say so. You have such creativity. I was so impressed when 2015, when former President Barack Obama came to Kenya, and they had exhibitions that were happening at the KICC, and I happened to attend some of those exhibitions, and they were all young people under 25, doing amazing things, creating amazing things. But I don't know why we don't focus on that. I don't know why we don't focus on what do I have, what can I use.
Right.
I've managed to attend some public participation forums before this COVID happened. We are now heading towards the annual development plan for this county, for the county that I'm in, has just been released. And this is where a lot of things are stated in terms of what issues are there, what budgets are going to be made to address those issues. I want to encourage young people, read the annual development plan. It's out, read it. It's 348 pages, but read it. Find out what is happening in your neighborhood, what issues are being raised in your neighborhood, what money is being allocated towards those issues. There are things you can do. You are not helpless. You are not unempowered. You're the most powerful human being existing in this lifetime. And so, and this season of COVID is the best time to do it because things have sort of slowed down. So we're not, we're not busy, we're not rushed, we don't have deadlines. Everything has sort of, some things have closed, unfortunately, but this is the best time to do it, to go to your neighborhoods and find out, why are we having issues of water? And we've had these issues.
And in addition to what you're saying, where do the young women come in politics in this COVID area? Do you think that having been at home, having suffered unemployment or the severe crisis of healthcare, do you think that this time, moving towards 2022, young women will come out in numbers as voters? Do you think they'll still be interested? Or do you think they just have no voice moving forward? Because most of the time, when we speak about youth, sometimes we leave the young women out. We think of youth as young men, and we think of the women as the older women. And as such, the young women are lost in the conversation. So what do you see in terms of the community? What are they saying?
Look, when I, as Martha, talk about young people, I am talking about young people, both genders, or all genders. I'm talking about young women and young men. The issues on the ground are not, they're not targeting a certain gender. They're affecting everyone across board. And so whether it's a young woman or a young man, it's unfortunate that when I run mentorship programs in my neighborhood, and it's up until this year, 2020, I have had challenges getting young women to attend these sessions. Because I think for the longest time, leadership, matters politics has always been male sort of specific. But and that's what I said, politics is about policy, and policy is about issues and ideologies. And so even for when I speak about youth, I'm talking about both male and female and everything else on top of that. And so our young women must be able to say, I am empowered to address an issue affecting my neighborhood. I am empowered. And you don't have to do much. Just have conversations. Have conversations with the lady at the kiosk or with at the vegetable stall. Have a conversation with the border person. Find out what the issues are, and then find out what the solutions are. You see, the thing about young people today,
just building on your conversation as you go on, could you maybe highlight two major issues that you think have really hit the young women constituency, that would make them say, hey, I need to be involved in the governance of my community, I need to vote, I need to be a voter, or I need to be part of the conversation? Do you think that the COVID situation has awakened a movement or a conversation?
Okay, so one issue that's come up now in this COVID season is the issue of substance abuse.
Right.
Where there's a lot of young people now who are using, well, I don't know if it's increased, or is it just because everything is at a standstill and so a lot of these issues are now magnified. But the issue of substance abuse, our young women and our young men can be able to go to their neighborhoods and find out what's the issue with drugs. Why is there a peak in the use of substance abuse, knowing that finances right now are strained? So where are we getting the money to buy the drugs? The drugs use of substances is just a symptom of a bigger disease. Unfortunately, we can't separate social issues from politics and leadership, because it's a whole conversation. Everything about family breakdowns and absentee parents and domestic violence at home, all those issues still affect us even when it comes to politics. And so for me, one issue, it would be substance abuse. How can young people engage with their peers on what's the underlying issue when it comes to substance abuse? What is it that the drugs are trying to cover? Number two is the issue of teenage pregnancies. A lot of our schools were closed in the COVID season. And so our high schoolers and our college going students and our primary school going students are at home. So our young people, because they have such networks, I kid you not, I've read somewhere and I've had conversations where young people seem to know a lot about what's going on with their neighbors than the parents do, because they associate with the kids. They're out there hanging out. They're in all these social media sites, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. And so there's a lot of conversation that's going on with young people. So how can we address the issue of teen pregnancies? Some of them, and this is not new, some of them are coming up now because our children are at home. And at some point, because of the lockdown, the parents were locked down in a different city and they were left with relatives. And so there's a lot of sexual assault happening within the home setting. So those two issues for me are issues that young people can begin to address.
Right. Thank you very much, Martha. I just, quickly build on that by asking Veronica, globally, we know young people as a whole have largely been unaffected by politics until we had Greta come up with Fridays for Future. And even in business, we have seen that young women promote businesses that have a social cause to them. So my question would be, do you think that young women are coming up with a movement or are more political aware because of the issues they have had to face due to maybe government laxity or policy laxity as a result of COVID? And do you think that now that COVID has hit people so hard, more so the young women's constituency, do you think that they will participate more in political processes than before?
Well, short answer, I really hope so. Maybe longer answer. I think in a lot of contexts, women have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic, be it for health services that they didn't get anymore during the pandemic, maternal health, etc., be it violence at home with everybody being locked up. There were a lot of issues that affected women harder than they affected men, although the pandemic was is hard for everybody. But especially women in a lot of contexts have been hit very hard by it. I'm not entirely sure, maybe I'm not optimistic enough, but I'm not entirely sure whether that will really translate directly into more political action. Because I think a lot of times when a crisis hits you particularly hard, it makes it even harder to get back up on your feet and to turn it into something kind of productive and constructive. But I think that a lot of young women have exactly the strength to do that. And I'd like to come back to a point that Martha made earlier as well about creativity of young women and men in that sense. And I think that's one of the really, really important points going forward politically. It's that a lot of the issues we face right now can only be solved in kind of new ways, in innovative ways. So innovation plays a major role in how we approach all the global problems we're facing, from climate to production issues, etc., etc. And I think having more young people in politics and having them influence politics with innovative ideas and with their creativity would bring us further a lot and would help us a lot to kind of at least get closer to the solution to a lot of the problems that we see.
Right, thank you. Just moving on to the question and answer, I'm seeing Doreen Ouma actively participating and doubling back on what Charles mentioned when he said, Charles mentioned how when a person is born in a certain party, they don't leave the party until forever in the Western countries. Here in Kenya, it is not so. Guys jump from one party to the other. My question is, what are we not doing right? What are the Western countries doing to stay in one party that long? We would like to be focused as a young generation. This jumping makes us unstable. Then again, no young person can hold a seat in my country. Reason is these elderly people love money and power. Well, Doreen, that was a bit harsh, but true in the same, in the same sense. And when it comes to political parties, in leadership positions, I would like to really emphasize on the need for institutionalization of political parties in Kenya, because one thing that I have noticed in the programs I have gone through abroad in various political parties globally is that the parties do not depend on an individual for the life and sustenance of the party. What you have noticed is most parties in Kenya die or people move because, as Charles said before, there's the personality that holds the party together, that people follow the ideology of the person as opposed to the ideology of the party. And right now, the political parties liaison committee has been in court for the past 7 years trying to put in place a bill that allows for the political parties fund to be equally distributed, at least have 10% of the fund allocated to various parties that are registered, that are legally registered. Because already the Kenyan law requires us to have a minimum of 24 registered party offices with staff. And this money has to come from somewhere. Now, if your party does not have members of parliament or county assembly or members who can remit the money as regularly, then it means somebody has to fund this process. And when somebody funds this process from their pocket, then they own the party. So I think the way out of this is to institutionalize political parties. And as such, young people will be able to have an entry point, because this means that you don't owe loyalty to an individual. If they decide to go with the money or with their personality, then you still remain with the party and it's still funded by state institutions. As such, the party becomes accountable to the state rather than accountable to an individual. Of course, it's a long journey, because when this bill was signed in the year 2002, NAC, that time Martha Karua was the party leader. She is a very good lawyer, and she wrote a bill that stated that you need to have at least 40 members of parliament, and that is a really high threshold for many parties that are not dominant. So there have been discussions. Do we really need to have national parties? Is there a chance for us to have regional parties? But these are conversations that are ongoing. And now, in the interest of time, I would like to wind up the conversation to start the beginning of the end by just having a run through from the panelists to look at what do they see in the future for young people engaging in politics in a post-COVID situation, adding the conversation that was started by Frida. I think it was Frida, who I said I will get back to. I'm just getting up, I'm pulling up her comment where she said, it will be interesting how social media influences our next elections. In my constituency, people have always said voters are not in social media, but they have always been right, because the most influential candidates on social media hardly become successful. So noting in your various constituencies in Germany as an abroad constituency, and Charles and Martha locally, what do you see as the future for politics and campaigning, noting that some of the African constituencies locally are now thinking that COVID was a hoax and they really need not adhere to social distancing? So what do you think is the future basically for politics and young people in a post-COVID era? I'll start with Charles.
One, I see a lot of change when it comes to politics, especially in our 2022 campaigns. I'm seeing a more of secular form of politics, since we are all investing and trying to do our politics on social media. But you understand, most of the target market, the voters are young people who can access social media in one way or another. And also, these young people are the people speak out of to talk about parties. So most of them, being in social media, will be able to pass the message. And our form of politics is going to take another shape coming 2022, because I see a lot of young leaders coming on board, and also the existing leaders who are quite older. From the look of things, a good number of them are going towards their retirement, and that is why you see them coming back to young leaders to try and bring a new breed of leaders who are mostly favorable to them, but appreciating the fact that we are going to have a new breed of leaders in the next 5-10 years. But we should also be very watchful, so that we cannot have a new breed of leaders, but with the same character, with the kind of leadership that we have now. So I see so many young aspirants. I see a good percentage of young people being elected in parliament. But my worry is, are these people going to be elected to give views of young people going to benefit young people, or are these people going to be sponsored to parliament and the Senate to safeguard whatever the outgoing or the retiring generation has been doing? Because I've seen so many young people being sponsored by old folks, but I'm worried about them because the agenda that they have is the agenda of the people sponsoring them. So I believe that our political dynamics are going to change. I know politics is very local. Even in Kenya, my region is not the same as Anika's region, but I see a new breed of young leaders.
Right.
I see young women, because there is a lot of rise in young women in politics. Someone told me that politics favor young women because, one, in the African culture, they are meant to be discriminated, but when they come out, people will be so much surprised that young ladies are there, and they can do even more to say, or they can even offer more to the community, more than it has been perceived. Because in the African culture, they perceive young women as as children, or they are meant to be in the house, or something like that. But once they come out, and that's why when you see young leaders in politics, especially women, they are driving the agenda of young people all over Kenya. And most of the people we know now who are very vibrant in Kenyan politics are being led by young ladies. So I see a lot of change in the future. I see a lot of positivity. I see a lot of mind shift, and a lot of free movement of young people when it comes to the political sphere.
Right. That's a really great observation and encouragement to the Young Women's Caucus. I'm actually having a meeting with the leaders of political parties who are young women, and it was surprising that I was able to get 71 leaders who are either secretary generals or treasurers or executive directors from the Young Women's Caucus. So a lot of encouragement from Charles there and great words. I'm seeing Mr. Lunani has just reached out to you for a political ticket, and I hope that goes very well. So we are wishing you all the best, Mr. Lunani. I see Charles has responded to you, and I hope you're able to touch base from here moving forward. I'm going to move to Veronica because we want to hear, we also want to be in touch with the global sphere. And what do you see as the future for young people in politics after the COVID situation?
Well, I think if I speak from the German perspective, I think young people in Germany who want to get politically engaged have a bit of an easier time than young people in Kenya do.
Right.
So I think that's already a bit easier for us in this regard. But what I hope and what I think will happen post-COVID is I hope that this kind of dynamic and motivation to get politically engaged, to actually shape the future that we're working on, how we recover from this pandemic, how our future as a society and as a country is supposed to look like. I hope that this motivation will carry on into post-COVID, into the post-COVID time. Maybe just a quick point on social media. I think it is a part of it. I think it's a part of our communication and our information system that we just, even if we wanted to, couldn't get rid of anymore. It's there. So I think we just have to deal with it and try to use it as best as possible. But I also do think it's only part of it. I think it will never substitute for person-to-person interaction and other ways of campaigning and of being politically engaged. But I think it's a part of the equation. And maybe one last point. Yeah, I think in Germany, as Natalie has mentioned already, we have the parliamentary elections coming up next year. And I think for Germany, that will be one big event where we'll see how we carry this youth politics and engagement of youth in politics into the new era.
Right. Moving on very quickly to Natalie, noting that she has attended, this meeting in very, extraordinary circumstances in terms of time. Just quickly, let us know, what do you think about policy formulation for young people? How do you think they'll be involved? And what do you think are the entry points in a post-COVID era?
Yes, thank you very much for this really interesting discussion, and I really hope we stay in contact. And Junge Union and CDU Germany, in cooperation with CAS, is always happy to help our international friends and is open to answer any further questions. From my point of view, I really think there will be a change in policy, and I really think there will be a CDU area after Angela Merkel, and we will have a variety of topics with climate change, digitalization. Ich bin noch ganz kurz in der Diskussion. That we will continue with policy that is focusing on a younger generation, as well as connecting young and old within politics. And I do think, and I think this is a main point that Veronica already said, the connection within the people. This communication and connection will be more intensified. I think just doing politics in Berlin is not enough, and more people realize that they have to talk to the people at the base and in their home constituencies to explain politics again and get more involved and have the conversation with the younger generation. And I think this is one of the main parts to keep on the communication and move on together.
Thank you very much, Natalie. We have given you the liberty to leave, noting that you have to go back to work. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And so now I move on to Martha, who has the great honor for winding up this discussion and really putting a bow on it. And tell us, Martha, what do you think the Kenyan youth will engage in largely in politics? How do you think they'll respond post-COVID? Or do you think it will be business as usual? And lastly, what are your recommendations moving forward for youth engagement in politics moving towards the 2022 general election?
Thank you for allowing me to put a bow on this conversation. I hope I do a really good job. This is what I'm going to say. For any young person who's looking for an elective position come 2022, you should have started 2 years ago. And the reason why I say you should have started 2 years ago, because the work, elections, and political positions should be about the work. It should be about the work. It should be about the impact in the grassroots. It should be about the change that's happening on the ground. It can't be about positions and all the perks that come with that position. It should be about the work. The challenge that we're having right now with our current leaders is that they get elected and we don't get to hear from them. Even in this COVID season, there's a lot of complaints that we don't know where our elected officials are. We don't know what they're saying. We don't know what their agenda is. We have no idea where they are and what they're doing. And so elections and change where this country is concerned has to be about the work. It has to be about what are you doing in the grassroots. And if you can start small in the grassroots, start now. You are 2 years late. Start now. Start having conversations with the people on the ground. Start doing research on what the issues are, what the budgets that had been put in place to address those issues. Read the policies that have already been set aside by government. I have started a show on Facebook, on social media, to talk about the Constitution of Kenya, because apparently there's conversation that this is going to change in who knows. So how is it going to change when we don't even know what it currently says? So start where you are, start with what you have. Information is power, but application of information is transformation. So start now as a young person. You don't need the finances. You just need to use the resources you have now, and you have your brain as your most powerful resource. So start now. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha. That was really powerful. Moving forward, I am going to thank everyone who joined this meeting and the panelists for the rich conversations. And I'm going to wind this up by saying to the youth, we really need to be aware of what is going on in the country. We have a constitutional change looming. We have a general election coming up. We have political parties restructuring, merging, and rebranding. Where is you and your position in this whole process? We need to be able to step up and advocate for each and every government going to be formed. We need to argue for a quota, not only in parliament, but also in government. We need to ensure that at least the leadership of each ministry has a youth quota that is fulfilled. The only way to move forward in youth engagement in politics is to ensure that we have intergenerational co-leadership, to put us in the same table that the leaders who have been there over time, the veterans, to put us on the same table, to give us negotiating power, and to ensure that the policies that are enacted today, tomorrow, and for our future are cognizant of the role of the youth. Noting that unemployment has hit us hard, noting that our healthcare system has been exhibited to be in shambles. We can no longer stay idly by. We can no longer be on the sidelines. We need to get involved in the processes of governance and politics. As such, I leave it up to you all and challenge you to ensure that in your own way, you get involved. After COVID, we have one agenda: to build back better. As such, this comes to the end. It has been a brilliant conversation. You are all amazing. Thank you to the attendees for your brilliant questions, and thank you to the panelists. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Let me just wrap up the conversation from Konrad-Adenauer Stiftung. Thank you for the discussion, to all the panelists, also to Natalie, who already left. Thank you to everyone joining in the conversation here in the chat. Remember to continue the discussion. The topics we had here of youth engagement, it should not end in 2 or 3 minutes, but we have to continue the discussion. Take it to the social media on Facebook, on Twitter. You also know the hashtags we use to coordinate the discussion. And then, well, engage in politics. We've seen that, well, parties in Kenya may not be ideological, but then it's up to to you and to us to make them ideological parties, to give them manifestos if they don't have a manifesto, to formulate policy papers and carry them into the party so that the parties can carry them out. So it's up to us. We have to engage for that. And we have seen that there are many touch points for us to engage in. And you know that Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in Kenya, but also in other offices in the world, we are there to support those ideas of political participation within parties, within the civil society, and also within parliament and within the bureaucracy and all those fields of politics that there are. Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is there to support. And so that's what we do in Kenya as well. Annika and Martha note from our mentorship program that it's very important to us to lead young people towards politics and to support them there. Charles knows about our cooperation with KANU, but also with other parties to give them the structures for people to engage in, for every citizen. And but all the work you do and we do is only as good as what we engage in. So that's what I leave you with, engage in politics, just as we do. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. I wish you a pleasant evening, and remember to tune in next week and the weeks after again. Thank you all very much, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.